In the heart of Enugu, a young woman named Amara Nwoke packed a single, worn-out bag. She was leaving her village, leaving behind the fields she knew and the family she adored, all for a promise of a better life in Lagos. Her parents were struggling, her siblings needed her, and a job as a housemaid for a wealthy family seemed like their only hope. Little did she know, this journey would lead her into a world of unimaginable luxury, dark secrets, and a love that would cost everything. Amara arrived at the Okafor mansion in Lekki, her eyes wide with a mix of awe and fear. The sheer scale of the house was overwhelming. She was greeted by the formidable chief and Mrs. Okafor, their expressions as polished and unreadable as the marble floors beneath her feet. Their daughter, Chisholm, sized her up with a cold, dismissive glance, a cloud of expensive perfume and suspicion hanging around her. Finally, Amara was introduced to the reason she was there. Ken Okafor, the family's son, confined to a wheelchair, his body weakened by a failing kidney, his spirit seemingly broken. He barely looked at her, his gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the opulent room. Her first days were a blur of chores and quiet observation. Chisholm watched her like a hawk, ready to pounce on any mistake, convinced Amara was just another village girl with greedy intentions. But Amara's work ethic was undeniable. She cleaned with a quiet diligence, her honesty shining through in small, unnoticed acts. Slowly, Chisholm's icy exterior began to thaw, replaced by a grudging respect. Amara's primary duty, however, was caring for Ken. He was a fortress of silence, retreating further into himself each day. But Amara was patient. She didn't push or pry. Instead, she offered small kindnesses. She would place a book just within his reach, pour him a glass of water before he had to ask, and simply sit quietly in the room, her presence a silent offering of support. One afternoon, a sleek sports car pulled into the driveway. A woman named Toke Balogun, Ken's fiancée, swept into the house. She was beautiful, stylish, and utterly cruel. She complained about the air conditioning, criticized the decor, and spoke to Ken not with love, but with impatience and pity. She barely glanced at Amara, treating her as if she were part of the furniture. After Toke's toxic visit, the silence in Ken's room felt heavier than ever. Then, for the first time, Ken spoke directly to Amara. He asked her about her home. Hesitantly at first, then with a growing warmth, Amara told him about her village in Enugu. She described the scent of the earth after the rain, the taste of the mangoes from her father's tree, the sound of her siblings' laughter. As she spoke, a profound peace settled over Ken. He saw a world beyond his gilded cage, a life filled with simple, genuine joy, and for the first time in months, he smiled. While a fragile bond was forming between Ken and Amara, a sinister plot was unfolding in the shadows of the mansion. Unbeknownst to anyone, Chief and Mrs. Okafor had run medical tests on Amara. The results were a perfect match. She could be the kidney donor Ken so desperately needed. But they had no intention of asking. They saw Amara not as a person, but as a solution, a disposable means to an end. Their plan was as cold as it was cruel. They would lure her abroad under the pretense of a family trip, take her kidney, and ensure she never returned to tell the tale. One evening, Chisholm was passing her parents' study when she overheard a hushed phone call. The words she heard chilled her to the bone. Her parents were discussing travel arrangements, surgeons, and the final, horrifying detail: how to dispose of Amara's body so it would never be found. The girl she had once despised, the girl who had shown more kindness to her brother than anyone else, was about to be murdered by their own parents. Horrified and disgusted, Chisholm ran to Ken's room. With tears streaming down her face, she told him everything. Ken's devastation was absolute. The thought of his life being saved at the cost of Amara's was unbearable. He refused to be a part of such a monstrous act. In that moment, the siblings, once distant, were united by a single, desperate purpose. They had to get Amara out. That night, as a storm raged over Lagos, their plan went into motion. While Chisholm created a clever distraction for the security guard at the main gate, Ken, his body racked with pain, guided Amara through the dark, overgrown gardens toward an old, forgotten service gate. The rusted lock gave way with a groan. Hand in hand, they slipped out into the rain-swept streets, disappearing into the night. They found refuge in a cheap, anonymous guest house on the mainland, a world away from the sterile luxury of the Okafor mansion. The next morning, the storm outside had passed, but the one inside was just beginning. Ken, looking paler and more fragile than ever, finally told Amara the whole, ugly truth. He explained his parents' plot, the planned trip, the stolen kidney. He then handed her a small memory card. On it was a video he had recorded, a confession detailing his parents' entire scheme, declaring Amara's complete innocence and his refusal to participate in their crime. He made her promise to use it if anything happened to him. Just as he finished speaking, the door to their room burst open. Chief Okafor's hired men stormed in, their faces grim. But seconds later, the wail of sirens filled the air. Chisholm had secretly alerted the police. In the ensuing chaos, as the police swarmed the guest house, Ken's fragile body gave out. The stress, the escape, the illness, it was all too much. He collapsed, and in Amara's arms, with one last, lingering look, Ken passed away. At the police station, Chief and Mrs. Okafor, desperate and cornered, tried to spin a web of lies, attempting to frame Amara for kidnapping and even Ken's death. But Chisholm, her heart broken but her resolve firm, stepped forward. She handed the police the memory card. Ken's final words, his recorded confession, sealed his parents' fate. They were arrested, their empire of lies crumbling around them. Weeks later, Chisholm met with Amara. She handed her a letter from Ken, written before his death. In it, he had left Amara a significant portion of his inheritance, enough to change her family's life forever. It was not a payment, but a gift, a final act of love. He had only one request, that she live. Live for herself, and live for him, too. With Ken's gift, Amara was able to support her family, enroll in university, and begin to build a new life, a life forged in tragedy but defined by courage. She carried Ken's memory not as a burden, but as a guiding star, a reminder of the boy in the wheelchair who showed her the true meaning of love and sacrifice, and in doing so, set her free. Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more emotional stories. We'll see you in the next video.